Star Trek was not just a television show. It was a cultural phenomenon that reshaped how people thought about the future, technology, and diversity. When it first appeared on screens in 1966, it seemed like a simple science fiction program about a spaceship traveling across the stars. But beneath the surface, Star Trek was a bold vision of humanity's potential, exploring ideas of unity, morality, and exploration in ways that few shows of its time dared. Created by Gene Roddenberry, the show followed the crew of the USS Enterprise, traveling in the 23rd century to explore new worlds, discover new life forms, and boldly go where no one had gone before. The original series only lasted for 3 seasons, but its influence far surpassed its initial run. It sparked conventions, inspired countless spin-offs, and became a cornerstone of pop culture. Star Trek became more than a show. It became a universe with movies, animated series, books, games, and even museum exhibits. People from around the world saw in Star Trek a hopeful future where humans, regardless of race, nationality, or species, could work together peacefully. The show's impact went beyond entertainment. For many, it became a source of inspiration, a vision of what humanity could achieve if it embraced cooperation, curiosity, and courage. However, before William Shatner became the face of the franchise as Captain Kirk, there was another captain in the first pilot, a man named Christopher Pike, played by Jeffrey Hunter. Pike was serious, determined, and ready to lead the crew through the dangers of space. His portrayal was strong and emotionally charged, giving audiences a glimpse of a different kind of leadership. Yet, despite his promise, he was quietly replaced before the series officially began. Most fans never knew the full story behind why this happened, and it remains one of the most intriguing behind-the-scenes moments in television history. Jeffrey Hunter was a well-known actor at the time, admired for his charm, talent, and screen presence. He had starred in popular films such as The Searchers and King of Kings, and he brought a sense of gravitas to the role of Captain Pike. But behind the scenes, challenges were already brewing. Hunter's wife, Joan Bartlett, reportedly became involved in the production, attending meetings and making demands that producer Gene Roddenberry and the studio found difficult to manage. According to multiple sources, including William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, her involvement created tension, leading the producers to consider alternatives. While the official story given at the time was that Hunter was unavailable for the second pilot, other accounts suggest that personality clashes, contractual issues, and disagreements over the show's direction played a major role. Roddenberry faced a critical decision: continue with the established actor or reimagine the captain entirely. Ultimately, he chose the latter, and William Shatner was cast as James T. Kirk, a captain with a very different style and energy. Kirk's charisma, risk-taking, and boldness captured audiences in a way that differed from Pike's quiet, controlled authority. This decision would shape the trajectory of Star Trek forever. While Pike's presence was brief, it was influential. Footage from the original pilot, The Cage, was later repurposed in the 2-part episode The Menagerie, which gave fans a glimpse of Pike's fate, showing him injured and confined to a wheelchair, yet still a strong and respected leader. Through this careful preservation of Pike's story, Star Trek honored the contributions of Jeffrey Hunter, even though he never returned to the show. This early replacement was more than a casting choice. It reflected the delicate balance of creative vision, personality conflicts, and production realities that define television. In a sense, the quiet removal of Captain Pike became a pivotal moment, a turning point that set the tone for one of the most enduring science fiction franchises of all time. The story of Pike, Hunter, and the creation of Captain Kirk reminds fans that even the most beloved series often faces unseen struggles behind the cameras. It also highlights how individual decisions, personalities, and circumstances can have lasting effects, shaping not only a television show, but also the dreams and imaginations of millions of people who would follow Star Trek into the future. From Pike's quiet strength to Kirk's brash charisma, Star Trek demonstrated that leadership can take many forms, and that the stories we see on screen are often shaped by forces far beyond the plot itself. Star Trek's story began in the mind of a visionary named Gene Roddenberry, a man who believed that television could do more than entertain. It could inspire, challenge, and offer hope for the future. Before Star Trek, Roddenberry worked as a pilot, a police officer, and a writer, experiences that shaped his understanding of human behavior, teamwork, and moral dilemmas. He wanted a show that combined adventure with meaningful storytelling, a series where each episode could explore social issues, ethics, and humanity's potential. The first Star Trek series, later called Star Trek, the original series, was unlike anything that had appeared on television before. Roddenberry drew inspiration from classic works of science fiction like Forbidden Planet, literature such as Gulliver's Travels, and even familiar television genres like westerns. He imagined the USS Enterprise as a frontier vessel, similar to a space-age wagon train, exploring unknown worlds with a crew that represented the best of humanity. The pilot episode, The Cage, introduced audiences to a universe that was both imaginative and morally grounded. It featured Captain Christopher Pike, a thoughtful and disciplined leader who faced challenges that tested both his intellect and his emotions. From the very start, Roddenberry emphasized diversity, creating a crew that reflected a vision of unity and cooperation across cultures and backgrounds. This was groundbreaking for 1960s television, a time when racial segregation, civil rights struggles, and political tensions were shaping society. The Enterprise's crew included a Japanese helmsman, Sulu, played by George Takei, a black communications officer, Lieutenant Uhura, portrayed by Nichelle Nichols, a Russian navigator, Pavel Chekhov, played by Walter Koenig, a Scottish engineer, Scotty, played by James Doohan, and an alien first officer, Spock, played by Leonard Nimoy. Each character brought a unique perspective, skill set, and identity, representing a hopeful vision of the future where differences were strengths, not barriers. Roddenberry's goal was not only to entertain, but also to educate and inspire viewers, showing them that cooperation, respect, and moral courage could overcome the challenges of a complex and uncertain universe. While the first pilot with Captain Pike was critically praised, it was rejected by NBC for being too cerebral and not exciting enough, which led Roddenberry to rework the concept and eventually introduce Captain Kirk as a more dynamic and charismatic leader. This decision was pivotal, but the original pilot remained an important part of Star Trek's foundation, providing ideas, characters, and storylines that would later resurface in episodes like The Menagerie. Beyond television, Roddenberry envisioned Star Trek as a broader universe, one that could expand into films, books, comics, and other media. Over time, his vision proved accurate, as the franchise became a multi-billion-dollar phenomenon with a lasting impact on popular culture. The Star Trek universe also reflected Roddenberry's optimism about humanity. It imagined a world where people had solved many of the problems that plagued the 20th century, poverty, war, racism, and were instead focused on exploration, science, and peaceful collaboration. This optimistic message resonated with viewers, especially during a time of social upheaval, political unrest, and rapid technological change. Audiences found hope in the idea that humanity could grow, learn, and work together to overcome challenges. Yet, the journey from concept to screen was not simple. Producing a science fiction show in the 1960s required convincing executives that viewers would accept stories set in space with aliens, advanced technology, and moral dilemmas that mirrored real-world issues. Roddenberry's creativity, persistence, and strong vision helped overcome these challenges, but he also faced resistance from networks, studios, and even some actors. Despite these obstacles, his determination ensured that Star Trek would not only be produced, but would also carry a bold, hopeful message. In essence, Roddenberry's original vision set the tone for everything that came afterward, from the adventures of Captain Kirk and the original crew to the later films and series that expanded the universe. His dream was a television show that entertained, educated, and inspired, and with the support of a talented cast and crew, he created something far greater than a simple sci-fi program. Star Trek became a cultural touchstone, a story of hope and courage, and a platform to explore human potential through the lens of space exploration, adventure, and moral challenge. This foundation, built around Captain Pike's original pilot and the ideas of Gene Roddenberry, would influence every corner of the franchise for decades, to come point when the most remarkable aspect of Star Trek was the diverse crew of the USS Enterprise. In a time when American television largely showed homogeneous casts, Roddenberry deliberately assembled a team that represented a global and even interstellar future. Each member brought unique qualities and cultural backgrounds to the show, symbolizing a world where differences could unite rather than divide. The helmsman, Hikaru Sulu, played by George Takei, was Japanese, and his presence on the bridge of the Enterprise sent a powerful message at a time when memories of World War II were still fresh. Lieutenant Uhura, portrayed by Nichelle Nichols, was a black woman in a major role, a groundbreaking choice for the 1960s. Her character was intelligent, competent, and essential to the crew, and she was shown as an equal among her colleagues rather than relegated to stereotypical roles that were common for black women at the time. Chekhov, the young Russian navigator played by Walter Koenig, was added later to appeal to younger audiences and to reflect a hopeful vision of international cooperation during the Cold War, while Montgomery Scotty Scott, played by James Doohan, brought Scottish charm, technical brilliance, and a strong sense of loyalty. Finally, Spock, the half-human, half-Vulcan first officer played by Leonard Nimoy, embodied logic, discipline, and the tension between emotion and reason, providing a character whose struggles with identity resonated with viewers on multiple levels. This ensemble created a microcosm of the world, a future where people of different races, nationalities, and even species work together as equals. The symbolism was clear. Star Trek imagined a future worth striving for, one in which humanity had overcome prejudice and united for exploration and discovery. Beyond the symbolism, the cast faced real challenges behind the scenes. Nichelle Nichols, for example, considered leaving after the first season to pursue her dreams on Broadway. She was inspired to stay after meeting Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who told her that her role as Uhura was profoundly important. King explained that her character was a rare positive representation of black people on television and that it inspired hope for a better future. His encouragement convinced Nichols to remain with the show, making her a pioneer for representation on television. George Takei also faced obstacles, both as a Japanese American and as an actor navigating Hollywood during a period of limited roles for Asian performers. James Doohan, though Canadian, had to adopt a Scottish accent for his role, which would eventually become iconic, but required dedication and consistency despite his background in radio and live television performances. Leonard Nimoy's role as Spock, meanwhile, came with the challenge of making an alien character believable while also emotionally compelling. Actors had to balance character depth with the technical demands of a sci-fi series, including complex sets, props, and futuristic technology that often malfunctioned. These challenges, however, did not diminish the cast's impact on audiences. Star Trek inspired viewers worldwide, showing that people of all backgrounds could contribute to something larger than themselves. The show's moral messages, combined with the diversity of the crew, created an enduring legacy that still resonates today. Fans known as Trekkies or Trekkers connected with the show not just for its stories, but for its ideals, attending conventions, writing letters, and immersing themselves in a vision of a hopeful, cooperative future. The crew's example went beyond the screen, influencing generations of scientists, engineers, and explorers who were inspired to pursue careers in fields once considered impossible. The Enterprise became a symbol of inclusivity, teamwork, and human potential. While the actors faced typecasting and career challenges, their performances left a lasting impression, demonstrating how fictional characters could have real-world cultural and social significance. From the bravery of Captain Pike to the diplomacy of Spock, the technical genius of Scotty, the moral compass of Uhura, and the youthful energy of Chekhov, the crew showed that success comes from cooperation, respect, and embracing differences. In this sense, Star Trek was more than a television program. It was a blueprint for a better world, reminding viewers that humanity's future depends on unity, understanding, and a shared commitment to exploration and discovery. The legacy of this pioneering crew continues to influence not only the Star Trek universe, but also global culture, illustrating how storytelling can shape ideals and inspire action far beyond the bounds of entertainment. Even though Star Trek portrayed a united and capable crew on screen, life behind the scenes was often complicated. The cast faced long hours, demanding schedules, and the pressure of bringing to life a vision of the future that was still unfamiliar to many audiences. Despite the groundbreaking diversity of the Enterprise crew, the actors were not immune to the realities of Hollywood. Nichelle Nichols, who played Lieutenant Uhura, faced one of the most significant personal decisions of her career. After the first season, she considered leaving the show to pursue her dream of performing on Broadway. At the time, many actors, especially women of color, felt constrained by the roles available to them in television and film. Nichols worried that staying on a science fiction series might limit her future opportunities, or typecaster in a niche genre. However, fate intervened in a way that would change the trajectory of television history. Nichols attended a fundraiser for the NAACP, where she met none other than Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who personally expressed his admiration for her work. Dr. King explained that her role on Star Trek was revolutionary. He said that seeing a black woman as a competent officer, equal to her white and male colleagues, was incredibly powerful. He told Nichols that the show had a profound impact on young viewers, particularly children, who were witnessing, perhaps for the first time, an image of equality, respect, and professionalism on screen. King emphasized that her character offered hope and inspiration at a time when civil rights were still being actively fought for in society. Hearing this, Nichols realized that her presence on the show was far more than just a job. It was a form of advocacy, a chance to demonstrate that representation mattered and could influence public perception. This encounter convinced her to stay, allowing her to continue shaping the image of black women in television and solidify her place as a pioneer in the industry. Nichols' experience highlights a unique aspect of Star Trek. While the stories explored distant worlds and alien civilizations, the series also reflected and influenced the social issues of its time. The cast's work was a delicate balance between entertainment and moral responsibility. George Takei, Walter Koenig, and James Doohan, along with Leonard Nimoy, also experienced the pressures of typecasting, studio interference, and the need to adapt to a groundbreaking yet uncertain show. Beyond personal career challenges, the actors had to manage the expectations of fans, networks, and producers, all while navigating the technical difficulties of portraying life on a futuristic spaceship. Sets were often cramped, special effects were rudimentary by modern standards, and filming schedules were grueling, with multiple episodes produced in a single season. Yet the actors persevered, understanding that the show's message and cultural significance outweighed the hardships. Star Trek was not just entertainment. It was a statement about what society could become. For Nichols, the moral and social weight of her role became clear after meeting Dr. King. She realized that she could make a difference, that her choice to stay could inspire generations of viewers. Over time, this impact became visible. Nichelle Nichols inspired young African Americans to pursue careers in science, engineering, and even space exploration, with some crediting her role as Uhura for motivating them to join NASA. In this sense, Star Trek blurred the line between fiction and reality. It showed that television could have tangible effects on culture and society, a lesson that resonates even today. Behind the scenes, the cast struggles, personal choices, and interactions with influential figures like Martin Luther King Jr. were as dramatic and meaningful as any episode. They remind us that the making of a television series is about more than scripts and special effects. It is about the people who bring it to life, the decisions they make, and the influence those choices can have on the world. Before William Shatner became the iconic Captain Kirk, Star Trek's first pilot introduced audiences to a very different captain, Christopher Pike, played by Jeffrey Hunter. The Cage, as the pilot was titled, was unlike anything viewers had seen on television before. Jeffrey Hunter brought a serious, strong, and commanding presence to the role, portraying a captain who was both disciplined and deeply human. Pike's character was full of emotional complexity, capable of anger, frustration, and compassion in equal measure. The episode followed the USS Enterprise as it arrived at Talos 4, a remote planet controlled by aliens who had powerful psychic abilities. These aliens could create illusions so realistic that they could manipulate human perception, effectively controlling the mind of anyone they chose. They wanted Pike to stay on Talos 4 and help them rebuild their lost civilization by creating a new group of humans, using illusions to trap him in a dreamlike world. Pike resisted their control, demonstrating his moral strength, intelligence, and determination. He refused to submit to their manipulations, showing the audience that the Enterprise captain was more than a figurehead. He was a moral compass and a leader capable of navigating extraordinary circumstances. Hunter's portrayal was gripping and intense, and his performance left a lasting impression, even though it would be his only appearance in the Star Trek universe. Behind the camera, however, things were far less smooth. While the studio and creators recognized Hunter's talent, there were tensions that would prevent him from continuing with the series. According to multiple sources, including William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, Jeffrey Hunter's wife, Joan Bartlett, played a significant role in these conflicts. Reports suggest that she attended production meetings, expressed dissatisfaction with the pilot, and made demands regarding how her husband should be filmed, including restrictions on camera angles and screen time. These actions, whether motivated by protection or ambition, created friction with the production team. Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, wanted Hunter to stay, but the challenges posed by the actor's representation and other behind-the-scenes issues eventually led to the decision to move on. In addition to these personal conflicts, there were business considerations. NBC executives were not entirely convinced that Hunter's portrayal would connect with the audience for a long-running series. The network sought a captain who could appeal to a broader range of viewers, balancing seriousness with charisma, and ultimately, Hunter's availability and willingness to commit to the rigorous schedule became a central concern. The combination of these factors, Hunter's limited availability, studio tensions, and network preferences, led to a pivotal moment in television history: the decision to recast the captain's role and eventually create James T. Kirk, a new character who would become the face of Star Trek. Even though Hunter left the show after the first pilot, his influence remained. The footage from the cage was later incorporated into a 2-part episode called The Menagerie, allowing Captain Pike to have a narrative closure while establishing a connection to the original series. Pike's character was shown as older and injured, confined to a wheelchair and unable to speak, yet still remembered as a courageous and moral leader. This preserved Hunter's contribution to Star Trek history and honored the importance of the first captain. The story of Pike in the Cage is a reminder of how early creative decisions, casting choices, and even personal relationships behind the scenes can shape the trajectory of an entire franchise. Pike's brief appearance laid the foundation for the exploration of leadership, morality, and humanity that would become hallmarks of Star Trek. Without Jeffrey Hunter's role, the universe of Star Trek might have evolved differently, and the iconic figure of Captain Kirk may never have taken flight in the hearts and minds of fans worldwide. After the original pilot, The Cage, was completed, the producers faced a difficult decision. Jeffrey Hunter had delivered a compelling and serious performance as Captain Pike, but the studio and network were uncertain about his long-term commitment and his ability to lead a series that could potentially run for multiple seasons. Additionally, tensions with Hunter's wife, Joan Bartlett, who reportedly made strong demands and attempted to control aspects of her husband's role, complicated matters. Gene Roddenberry and the production team had to weigh the creative vision of Star Trek against the practical realities of casting and the future of a series. Rather than continuing with Hunter, they decided to recast the captain's role entirely, leading to one of the most significant decisions in television history: the creation of a new character, James Tiberius Kirk, played by William Shatner. Shatner brought a very different energy to the show. Where Pike had been serious, reflective, and emotionally restrained, Kirk was charismatic, bold, and willing to take risks. This shift in personality fundamentally changed the tone of Star Trek. The series moved from the cerebral and philosophical feel of The Cage to a more adventurous, fast-paced, and action-oriented storytelling style. Shatner's portrayal emphasized leadership that was instinctive and sometimes impulsive, with moments of humor and charm that made Kirk more relatable and engaging for a wider audience. Casting Shatner was not a simple choice. The producers needed someone who could not only act convincingly, but also become the anchor for an ensemble cast, inspire loyalty in both the crew and the audience, and embody the ideal of the bold starship captain. Shatner's prior work included a variety of television and stage roles, but he was not yet a household name. Roddenberry recognized that Shatner had the intensity and screen presence necessary to carry the show while also allowing other characters, like Spock, Uhura, and Scotty, to develop fully. The transition from Pike to Kirk also required rewriting scripts, adjusting storylines, and redefining character dynamics. The network was concerned that the audience might reject a completely new lead, so careful attention was paid introducing Kirk while still respecting the narrative established in The Cage. This included preserving some elements of Pike's story, which would later be incorporated into the 2-part episode The Menagerie, ensuring continuity and honoring Hunter's contribution to the Star Trek universe. William Shatner's arrival marked the beginning of what many consider the definitive Star Trek era. Kirk became a character who could appeal to multiple demographics: Young viewers who loved action, older viewers who appreciated moral dilemmas, and science fiction fans who craved imaginative storytelling. The chemistry between Kirk and Spock, in particular, became a central element of the series, combining human emotion with Vulcan logic and creating dynamic tension that drove many storylines. Beyond creative considerations, practical matters like contract negotiations, scheduling, and network expectations influenced the casting decision. Shatner's willingness to commit to the rigorous filming schedule, coupled with his distinctive style and energy, made him the right choice at the right time. In hindsight, replacing Pike with Kirk was not only a casting change, but a turning point that defined the identity of Star Trek. It demonstrated how behind-the-scenes decisions, personal dynamics, and practical constraints could shape the creative direction of a show. The legacy of this choice continues today, as Kirk remains one of the most recognizable and celebrated figures in science fiction history. The shift from Pike to Kirk also set the tone for future Star Trek leaders, establishing a balance between bravery, moral integrity, and charisma that would influence captains in all subsequent series. Without this pivotal change, the franchise might have evolved very differently, and the cultural phenomenon that Star Trek became may never have reached the heights it did. Even though Star Trek became an iconic and beloved franchise, the original cast faced significant challenges once the series ended after just 3 seasons. Many of the actors were typecast, meaning they became so strongly associated with their Star Trek characters that casting directors struggled to see them in any other role. William Shatner, for example, found it difficult to secure work immediately after the series ended. The success he had achieved as Captain Kirk, which could have been a blessing, became a burden. Shatner was offered mostly minor roles or commercial work, including appearances in advertisements for products like margarine and supermarkets, work he had previously avoided. He described this period as frustrating, recalling that he was forced to accept roles he would never have considered before, simply to make ends meet. His financial struggles were compounded by a recent divorce, which left him with little money and few options. James Doohan, who played Scotty, faced a similar predicament. Known for his Scottish accent and engineering expertise aboard the Enterprise, Doohan had previously performed a wide variety of characters in live television, radio, and film. However, after Star Trek, producers and casting agents found it difficult to envision him as anyone other than Scotty. Even years of acting experience couldn't overcome the image he had developed in the minds of audiences and executives. Walter Koenig, who played Chekhov, also experienced the effects of typecasting. Though younger and energetic, he struggled to be cast in non-Star Trek roles and had to explore alternate avenues, including theater work and teaching. Nichelle Nichols, meanwhile, faced different pressures. While her role as Uhura was groundbreaking and celebrated, Hollywood offered her very few opportunities outside of Star Trek because of the racial barriers of time. Despite her trailblazing presence on television, she often found herself limited by the narrow roles available to black actresses. Over time, the cast discovered a solution that allowed them to continue working and maintain visibility: fan conventions and personal appearances. These events, which became increasingly popular in the 1970s, allowed the actors to meet dedicated fans, sign autographs, and participate in panels discussing the series. While these appearances were initially supplemental income, they also became a way for the actors to reconnect with their roles, embrace their impact, and gain recognition that traditional Hollywood work had denied them.